Hey, I'm here to talk about why I think the AI bubble isn't actually a bubble. So about 6 months ago, I made some videos on this channel that I should have made a lot earlier, honestly, about why I thought the AI bubble wasn't real and why, a lot of like the common misconceptions and things like that. Um, there's a reason why I'm like uniquely in a position to kind of talk about this stuff that I'll talk about in a sec, but just to preface, there's no like notes or script that I'm reading off of this video. I have like jot point notes on like kind of things that I want to bring up, but like I'm gonna be just talking off like the knowledge that I like kind of already have on all this. Um, so 6 months ago, I made like a couple videos. It got like like 1,000 views, which is more than I expected. Um, but it was talking about all the common things I was seeing at the time, um, and kind of trying to dispel them. And I thought that like I don't really have to make this a regular thing. People will eventually kind of analyze the topics that I was talking about, like, oh yeah, this actually isn't really true. Turns out that's not a thing at all, and all the misconceptions that I was talking about have only gotten more popular with time. Um, and now there's a lot more kind of actual, pretty well researched critical evidence against why it might be a bubble, why AI might be overhyped, like all that stuff. I'm I have pretty good kind of counter arguments and nuance against that. In my real life, I'm in a position where I have good information and um, kind of flow from the research community of AI, people that work at big labs, things like that. But I myself don't work there, so I don't have any incentive to like, you know, prove that the bubble is like, over that the bubble is overhyped, and that's kind of being talked about too much, or like uh, it's not as like important of an issue that like, people are making it out to be, and there's like some false pattern matching. I'm also in a position where all the people that whose points I'm going to try and counter, Hank Green, Atrioc, CoffeeZilla. I've watched them for years. I'm very open minded to all of this. Other speculative bubbly areas. I'm pretty anti crypto and like all a bunch of other I'm in the camp of a person that would typically be anti AI and anti AI bubble or whatever, but like I'm not, and there's a lot of like good reasoning for that, and I think evidence to help back that up. Um, like I'm in a very again just a, I am in like a very unique position to talk about this. There are not that many people that kind of are are that in touch with like why like all the spending is justified. Everything is so like um there was reasonings behind it, and it's not just like people spending a huge amount of money to pump up their stock price. I'm pretty well read on economics and financial history and all like kind of the surrounding nuance that you need to take like a good objective like systems analysis at this. Um, but again, yeah, I also understand. Anyways, okay, let's get into it. So first, I'm just gonna start off with like the kind of more like mainstream social media political talking point type of stuff. I'm gonna try and just kind of get those out of the way first. The one that immediately comes like off my mind whenever I bring this up. This is just like this isn't even like I'm not saying Atrioc or CoffeeZilla Hank or like Michael Burry. Any of them are like bring like these are their points, but like just what I see very often that I just want to like that were brought up in my last. I just want to like, get them out of the way. One is that AI water usage is like a thing or like a big issue. This one like I have to like I'm like if you are a person that doesn't use AI or hates AI because you think it is using up too much water, you need to rethink where and how you get your information and how you think about things. Um, I forget the specific statistic, but like, it's like eating a burger uses up like 10,000 times more water than it is to send like a single message to an AI. Um, like, if you genuinely like modeled your worldview based on like water usage and energy usage like that, um, you like you would basically be Amish because everything else that you do in life uses up more energy and water usage on a personal, on like on a micro level. On a macro level, um, the the environmental and water usage that the giant data center build outs and all this spend is going to cause is a concern, of course. But like we have like we've built out this level of data centers in the past, or like we have at least evidence to be able to know how much energy and stuff it'll take up. That in of itself, like how much, like it will be a substantial amount of energy that it'll use. Yeah, the water stuff is like a that's a non-issue, but because it's cooling, like it gets water stuff is a non-issue. It is a misconstruing of the fact that we use water for cooling, but isn't a that water can be reused if we really wanted to, and people like isn't suck up water. Like you just circulate water in a data center to cool it. The water doesn't disappear. Like if you really wanted to, you could reuse that water. It's not a lot for especially like the value like or like kind of the cost that it takes to build all of it and the value it generates and whatever like that's a plus very but for energy, yeah, it will take a substantial amount of energy, but the main thing that matters for the environmental concerns is where are we getting that energy. That is the main thing. Like let's say AI didn't exist and we find out that like making socks is like the new big like thing that humanity wants to take on as like this is the next thing big thing that's like going to change the world. It would take a lot of energy to build out factories to make socks if we determine like that's like the next big thing. We shouldn't not do something just because like gonna take more like you're that's not like how it works in like a system. Like you don't take whatever is constraining like the top level item and be like, yeah, AI is gonna take a lot of energy. Like I'm anti AI. Like it should be like, oh, let me work on fixing energy or like energy production, and then we can like enable AI and any other energy intensive task that to because again for humanity like I don't want to make this like too like deeper philosophical, but like in general, humanity is progress like humanity's progress as a civilization is almost one-to-one correlated with how much energy we produce per capita. So in general, producing more energy, even if AI is like not relevant, would be a good thing. And the main thing to focus on for environmental issues is making sure that energy comes from good renewable sources, like solar nuclear is like kind of ideal. But then we can look into like wind and geothermal and others, but like nuclear and solar are like our two most promising. Like we could genuinely like build this out like using just those two, and that's what by the way big companies are doing anyways, and are forced to by regulators to do anyways. So like that's if I think will we get solved is like a non like a mate. It's not enough of a thing for someone to be anti AI or anti or like that kind of thing off of. 1 second. So okay, the other one is like misinformation or like deepfake stuff. Uh, that this one is there's it's completely valid that like AI is a huge risk to our information like distribution systems and like social media and like faking something. Of course, it's a huge issue, but that is like that's an issue for us to solve on like the front end of the system. Like that's like you know social media platforms should require tagging. It should be by law required, sure. um there should be like encoded kind of in identification in AI images or AI text that like we can't see ourselves, but like AI, open AI could have like their own detector that like would I'm completely open to solutions like that. It's a valid issue, but it's not a valid enough issue like this is like unsolvable like humanity level. We cannot have AI now because like it's not we're not at that level with kind of the scale of that issue relative to everything else. um One thing that I really really don't like is that like, a lot of like the this like the points that I'm bringing up are, like which are like kind of just they're not actually that relevant to like the arguments I'm going to make later, but um they're more just like talking political points that people are using. um like some lawmaker in Congress will just be like AI water usage is out of control, all the people hate it, like without doing much research on it themselves, and they'll use it as justification for like certain AI regulation. Not that the AI regulation itself isn't like might be good or bad, but like they're like I really don't like that people are this misinformed and then using it as like justification to kind of push their politicians down a certain aisle of thinking. But um, kind of like one of the downsides of this being so popular. Um, I was gonna go on to like U.S. versus China stuff. That's what I had written down here. But like I think let's get into like the fun stuff. Okay, so um, we can start with Michael Burry because we can use that for the everyone has similar points. Michael Burry, um, famously recently, who like Jensen Huang basically like indirectly had to counter in his press earnings reports. Um, he thinks that AI is a bubble because of some pattern matching to like .com bubble practices, and specifically one of like the main like data things that he found was that um, AI companies are extending the deprecation that they apply to GPUs. And all that basically means is that they are writing now that the GPUs that they're, the data centers that they're building out basically will be useful for longer than they would have been like 2 years ago or something. That's like the main, they're kind of fudging the numbers like that so it makes their expenses look lower. That's like the entire like kind of premise of that. Um, and there is a lot to unpack there. I think one of the things that in general that I think is going to come up when I talk about this is that I really see all of their arguments as like someone trying to criticize the internet like back in like the 90s or something without using the internet. Like or like being maybe or maybe work knowing what like an internet company's like doing it at like why should I use instant messaging because you know email was so much faster or sorry why should I send mail like physically if email like kind of that kind of school. I know it's not one to one. There's some like stupidity there, but like that's what it feels like to me, and that's kind of what I want to draw some nuance to. So for the deprecation, that could be entirely true. It could be entirely true that their main motive for increasing the deprecation for GPUs is purely like just like a we want to make our earnings like better play. Um, One, I want to point out that this in of itself, while it's an issue, this in of itself would not pop the bubble. Like if for like because to pop the bubble, we would have to like we would get to year 3 or 4 like from now, where like originally they had the GPUs being like used up around the year 3 or 4, and now they have it like 6 years. We would get to year 3 or 4 from now, and like then we'd be like, oh yeah, no, they fudged the numbers. Like this, like it, it does like in order for the deprecation stuff to actually have some tangible effect, those GPUs would actually have to be rendered useless. And those GPUs, by the way, will never be rendered useless. Like it is, people are like, I've seen comparisons of people comparing them to like, oh, what if I tried to use a CPU from the 2000s? Okay, I use AI every single day in everything that I do. I like there are technical things I do that I would not be able to do, especially with coding, if AI didn't exist. Like I know that there's a lot of discourse around like AI coding is like a scam or whatever. I'm like in like the top like 0.001% like people like every new AI tool that comes out, I try it. See, like I do engineering work. I do like kind of like whole like I do like a lot of like different kinds of engineering work. Um, and people use the things that I don't want to like dox myself, so I'm trying not to go in depth here, but like people use those things. Like if it didn't work, it would get seen and like have to get fixed. Um, AI augments me in a way that like I would not be able to function currently as I do my work without it. Um, I know that there are a lot of thoughts on like people should like okay if you're purely a programmer and your job is to just engineer things, then yeah, just learn programming normally first, and then use AI to kind of augment you afterwards. There are people who don't have the technical skills to do something and use it to augment their original trade, which is what I do. I'm not like an engineer by trade. That's not like what I do. But I do lots of engineering tasks now because of AI and because like I still understand how like the engineering stuff works behind it. Um, there are so many people like that, and they all swear by it, and there's a reason they swear by it. Like right now I pay like $300-400 a month for like my AI tooling. If OpenAI put GPT 5.0 Pro into Codex, which is like their coding agent, and charged like $1,000 a month for that, I would pay that in a heartbeat. Like I've used 5.0 Pro and I know what it would do in that kind of like agentic. Like I would pay that in a heartbeat. Um, and they are only not they can't do things like that because they are bottlenecked by compute. Every single thing that AI labs are trying to do, they are so bottlenecked on compute, and compute is what the data centers give. By the way, that everyone's pointing to, it's like the big bubble spending thing. That is the big thing that like they're saying that like is like kind of an overspending, or like they're kind of stretching how long it'll be useful for. That is um a gross misunderstanding of the usage of AI. If um, let's say all AI progress itself like stalled, like our models don't get better, which won't happen by the way, or just like at least I'm not gonna guarantee, but like at least for the next like year won't happen because right now like labs have better models than we currently have internally. Um, if all model progress froze and we just got that extra data set or compute right now allocated to now, that would still be extremely useful for inference, which just means um, being able to like serve the model to be giving people access to the model to use. That's what inference means. That in of itself would be extremely valuable and useful. Like that thing that I said with 5.0 Pro, like that I could get that. That'd be much cheaper. Because more compute means per person it gets much cheaper, and the energy and water use per person also gets much cheaper. Um, like the unit economics get much better, basically. Um, oh, there's actually sorry, I need to write this down because it's something that I need to bring up. Okay, okay, we're good. Okay, I see to do so. Okay, um, per cheaper, and right now I use Codex, um, with their like the original like model offerings, and the TTS, which means like I don't know, or TPS, sorry, tokens per second, which just means like how fast the model generates like its output, um, is extremely slow. Like compared to other models like not on Codex, which is like their OpenAI's coding tool, it is very slow. Um, this is because of compute. This is a major compute constraint. If if like Codex was as fast as like other models like Claude or whatever, like I would be like 50% more productive, I think, like in my like day to day, because I could just send off more like research, review this code or whatever task. Um, like there are so many, and this is just like if model progress froze. The main constraint, like 80% of like OpenAI's compute spend right now is on research. Um, and they are so bottlenecked because there's so many things that they want to test out compute wise in research. Um, like there's a very studied correlation now that exists between how much compute access researchers have and the model progress we get. The more compute researchers have, which is called the scaling law. Scaling, and we're it's a version of the scaling law, but um, not that like you need to make models bigger and to make them better, but we need to give researchers more compute to try out different experiments, basically. Um, and there's a very studied relationship that if you give researchers more compute, they'll produce better models in like this regard. And this is why big labs are paying hundreds of millions of dollars for researchers. This is why that cost is justified for them, because the more researching talent we have, the more compute that we give them, the better our models will get. And the better models we get, the more profitable we'll be. And I will. This is the part that I will caveat. And like people say that AI companies and AI itself is wildly unprofitable. I have I think, pretty solid counter argument to that. That's what I wanted to note down earlier. I will get to that in a second. Um, so okay, I'm just tracing back. Okay, so let's go back to the six. So Michael Burry's arguing that because um, in six deprecation for data center build out is being extended to 6 years now, and now there are, in my opinion, and he laid out two kind of like issues with this. The first is that Nvidia themselves are saying that like they're trying to increase the rate at which they make better GPUs every year. Um, and the other one is that Nvidia is saying that, what was it? It was their um they think that the extension of the deprecation is justified, like the models that the GPUs will still be useful. Um, I think both of these are true, and both of them don't really impact the bubble thing. I'll explain why. So for the first one, on the if they increase the frequency of upgrades for their GPUs, and like um, again, Burry points out this is an issue because right now if we spend $1 billion on a data center using current gen NVIDIA GPUs, if next year NVIDIA releases better GPUs, it makes the unit economics of the last data center better. So it's less useful, and you want to instead spend on like the current generation. That's why it's kind of like bad to attach 6 years to a data center. Um, Again, my counter argument comes back to the token stuff that I just brought up. Right now, in of itself, inference is so bottlenecked, research is so bottlenecked that worst case scenario with all this data center build out, if the companies that are kind of tied to this, like OpenAI or whatever, failed, the worst case, besides of course economic fallout, but I think that won't happen with at least with AI stuff. Um, the worst case for all that data center spend is that our AI models would just get a lot better. Like that's it just means more compute is available for other researchers, and that like academia could use it more, which is extremely bottlenecked. Or consumer companies could use it more. Like the word like I think someone wrote an article on this like some AI researcher that like works at like a non big lab. They're like, oh, I hope AI has a bubble because then I get access to like all these like they might get cheaper and I might get to use like is like they want this like it is the progress that the technological progress that we made from these data centers is very justified. Um, that's why all the spend is worth it. The like all the big labs have access to their researchers. The researchers tell them, I'll run these experiments if I had access to this much compute. They say, oh, wow, okay, this actually is pretty justified. It lines up with our models that we have for on why more compute and more allocation is justified. And then that's why it gets greenlit. The other one was that NVIDIA saying that the usage is justified, or which one did I already? Um, if they okay, what happens if they increase frequency of things to of GPU upgrades to yearly? So for that one, this like the argument that Burry is making is true. Um, if we started upgrading models every year, it would make the past models worse, like less useful. But it like the past models would still be able to inference like current like everything that we have right now much better. Like it is to say that it's useless is wrong. Like I'm trying to be careful here with my words because like what he's saying is right, but it's not right in the sense that like this is like bubble ending or like industry ending. Like the worst case is if we start getting yearly GPU upgrades, is that one, Moore's law is broken for GPUs, and um that like or broken, or sorry, it's reignited, and we're now just getting AI progress even faster than before and could get even more useful products, which um like yeah, like like I mean that would just disprove like the bubble kind of improvement stuff, and like AI, like AI's over like we just get there faster. I think the EV kind of calculation there, that like the loss of usefulness of the spend that we put on last generation GPUs would be more than made up for in the huge gains that it would take to make those old GPUs useless. Like it would take a lot of GPU gains to make the old generation useless, and those gains would just speed up all of our AI research, inferencing, and products a lot more. Like it's it's a win-win. Like in either case, like if it slows down, oh, the deprecation was justified. Like it's fine. Like these GPUs are still much more useful than we thought they'd be. If it's not, our like we still get now we can just do stuff more efficiently. Like it, it's I don't really see like, and I see like it is the spend isn't like completely efficient if in its current model, but like even that in of itself isn't like an AI bubble ending thing. Like, um, I remember like the big tech companies right now with taking AI out of the picture have all done things that are like way more shady than this with like their accounting and all the like when Facebook was acquiring WhatsApp, like they skirted some like lines and things with like the regulators to like make numbers look different so they wouldn't get flagged. Like it Amazon like always like adds shady stuff to their acquisitions. The way stock compensation and like comp structure is done in general for like acquisitions and a lot of like startup compensation in general is like really shady. Like all of those, I think if I was set out with like the one mission of like finding out all the flaws that could like make tech look bad, there'd be lots. Tech itself doesn't have a like big tech does not have a good reputation like already because of those things. Like I just like the deprecation thing, if it turns out to be a very valid claim, the results of that are kind of just win-win. Where like we just get way better GPUs that help our AI stuff even more, um, or it just turns out that like it was wrong and that our GPUs are now just a lot more useful. Like it, I don't see how that affects like the broader like kind of argument, which is like AI would have to be very not useful, and that I can like you know like right now if AI model froze and instead the goal was on diffusing like the value creation of models into like the economy, like that in of itself has so much work to be done on like the product side that like we would get like okay I'm gonna go into the one where like people say that AI companies in general are wildly unprofitable. um yes, they're if you look at how much money does the company make, how much money does the company lose, yes, they are unprofitable. um but that's like it's kind of a like that's not how you look at like you know find it like there's a reason financial reports exist and people are just I feel like people are just pattern matching from like oh X crypto company loses this much money but they make this much, they're a scam. um it's kind of false pattern matching it like so I forget who said this. If someone I read this in like a research thing somewhere. AI company financials should be looked at as if each model in the company was its own like mini company basically. So um GPT GPT-4, which is the main model that started like the whole AI revolution and like made OpenAI dominant in consumer. That model, an iteration of that model that didn't cost that much more to train, cost like I think it was like $100 million or something. Even if it was $1 billion, like it doesn't. I think it was like 100 million to train initially. Let's say like all the product stuff and like training, GPT-4 will cost like let's say 500 million, a billion, which is like probably more, but like let's say it's around there. Um, the that got OpenAI to like $14 billion. Like just GPT-4 got OpenAI to $14 billion a year worth of revenue until GPT-5 was launched in like this summer, like summer of 2025. That model was extremely profitable in terms of the value it created and the value that was then captured. Like all the other spend was on trading future models. This like the argument that AI is wildly unprofitable is true if let's say the I don't really know the number, but like the 1 to 5 billion used to trade GPT-5 is like unprofitable or whatever. Like that would be a valid argument, but it's not true. Like I mean, like just right now ChatGPT's revenue exceeds that. I'm sure like the other costs like I'm simplifying this a lot, but like if you reduce it to like how much does it cost to train the model, to inference the model, to operate the product side of the model, like building out the like Chat GPT, like the actual like product side, consumer product side, all like the kind of like employee compensation that goes along with all those steps. Like that's how you should look at it with just one model. And if you look at it through that lens, OpenAI is profitable per model. it's like saying, okay, let's say Google decided to spend like $1 trillion right now on baking cookies, right? Like this or this, let's spend $1 trillion. You know, we have like really good earnings. We can spend a lot of money on baking cookies. It's like if they did that, and then someone saying, "Oh, YouTube is a bubble because it's super unprofitable." Look at this company's financials, and then it's like someone, Google search and Google ads are wildly unprofitable. It's all a scam. Look at their financials. They're losing $800 billion this quarter or whatever, because they like it's simplifying the economics of the actual product a lot. Um, the reason why I think so OpenAI is then wildly unprofitable because it's spending so much more on research on new on like new potential endeavors, like with consumer AI and Johnny I with like like the ex Apple guy with like some creating like an AI, like those are kind of like future endeavors basically, um, that do not affect the economics of AI itself. Like AI is a AI in products done well, like ChatGPT, is extremely profitable. The models used to train, um, like whatever is in those in the consumer products, cost much less than the revenue those products generate. Like the value in terms of the value it creates. That's why all the spending into data centers, into all the researchers to make better models is justified, because it makes sense that okay, so we've whenever we upgraded it by this amount, it our revenue grew this amount because our product became this much XYZ amount more useful. Um, Now, like that justifies us spending this much into, and all those predictions have held up so far. There's no indication at all that any of those trends are slowing. They're speeding up actually. Like if you look at like a chart on it, like our progress rate, the revenue, all of it is speeding up rather than slowing down. Saying that stuff would just, let's say, become linear improvement or even slow down or crash would be a very contrarian take to all the data around just AI consumer products. Um, I say this as someone that, like, I think, let's say if model progress rose right now and researchers and all the kind of giant organizations spend around this instead became dedicated to how can we make this model as useful as possible for everyday consumers, they would figure out a way. Like when I said that, like, remember when I said that, like, if they made GPT 5.0 Pro available right now, I'd spend $1,000 a month on it. I use Codex through a terminal, like a literal terminal, like like in the like movies when they show like a hacker scene using. I use it through a terminal. Like I don't like my mom is not using that. Like she's um, like if the goal was instead to how can we make this product more consumer friendly, and all the resources were put to that, they would, I'm like chat gpt and other, like it would be proven, like they could figure out a way with current models to show off the capabilities. Claude is extremely good with Excel. Like spreadsheets is basically automated. Like if you want to like make me a spreadsheet on this thing, have formulas that solve this thing, it's all solved, and people just don't know how to use it because they don't know. They're like Claude's like the less popular AI model. It's there's not like good marketing around that, or like kind of like it takes that stuff takes time. But we do know that it is profitable. Like AI consumer products are profitable. I think that spending is justified. Um, so that's kind of my view on like the AI is wildly unprofitable thing. Like really, like it really truly is like if Google spent a huge sum of money on some random thing right now, like you can't call YouTube, Google Ads, and all those things as like the kind of own per company or like per sect basis unprofitable. Like that's not how the finances for this work. I think because people aren't used to doing the finances for AI companies, and like in general there's like false like public, like it's people don't look for things like that to kind of justify. Like it's kind of like oh yeah, their finances are bad. Even if like you just look at like the way OpenAI breaks it down is kind of like they're kind of like shooting themselves in the foot. Um, when they release, or I guess when it gets leaked, when they're like raising funds, like it they just show like per year like the total amount they spend on researchers, the total amount they spend like on experiments or like or on data centers and infrastructure. Like they don't like they really need to add more nuance to it. Um, like I think instead if they just did like this is like Chat GPT spend, and this is like experiments related to models that'll be used in Chat. This is experiments for our consumer research or our consumer like device kind of like I think if they segmented it a lot better, which they definitely do internally, why like they think all this spend is justified. Um, that's stuff. Okay, I think I made that point hopefully clear that I think each model should be looked at like a per company basis, and that's like not being done at all. Um, the other one where so the other thing that I think has some validity is the claim on how circular AI spend is. So when like OpenAI, Nvidia is investing X amount of money into OpenAI, like $10 billion, and then OpenAI is then saying they'll buy $10 billion worth of Nvidia GPUs. It is circular. That is 100. Like if OpenAI crashed today and disappeared, there would 100% be a million like widespread contagious issues across like the entire like tech economy. Um, that is true, but that and AI being a bubble, like those are those the correlation there isn't as strong. Like yes, there are lots. Okay, one this is like a commonly kind of I think acknowledged claim. This spend, besides maybe OpenAI and like Anthropic and XAI, like this spending is happening with like the most profitable, largest companies in the history of humanity. Um, like like that like if if the spending was unjustified, like I think their stock valuations might be adjusted down like some couple dozen percent. I don't want to like it's just stupid to like predict on, but like it wouldn't go from like Amazon's like .com like minus 90% drawdown because they had no revenue or like any not much revenue to show. Like these companies produce a shit ton of value outside of like the AI spend. OpenAI is like some percentage owned by Microsoft. Uh, they have like it if this was startups like was done similarly in crypto, doing committing to this kind of spending and like build out and like this kind of ambition, this criticism would be justified. But because it's at its companies at these scale, like that nuance alone, I think kind of like decreases the impact that it would have on it actually being like a huge .com level bubble. Um, Another thing that's kind of worth pointing out is people are doing a lot of false pattern matching because so there was like we've had like a couple crypto bubbles, we've had great financial crash, we've had .com bubbles. It's very easy to pattern match some of the grifty weird things that happened there to similar things that are happening now. um one of which is that like the people that were most outspoken in support of crypto are also now most outspoken on support of AI. Do I like that just from like a general like culture perspective? Like no, but that doesn't mean that like just because those people are supporting it that like it's also at the same level of like grift. Like I think there's more nuance that we can definitely attach there. Like it it is mutual. Like those ideas do not have to exclusively exist, or like you know people who liked a past idea that turned out to be a scam can now like an idea that turns out to be super legitimate and useful. We know it's super legitimate and useful. There was never a crypto product that generated like I think OpenAI alone is just from ChatGPT is doing gonna do $20 billion this year, like annualized. Like that was never a thing back then. And again, that is it. That spend is also profitable if you just account like kind of if you apply like the economics of like the model allocations and spend per like it that is like value adding revenue that's being done there. Um, what like it, I know it sucks. Like I know just like the concept that like all these guys that super supported crypto, and all these guys that you know helped instigate the housing market, like all these kind of financial things that happened during the great financial crash, where the dot-com bubble are happening right now. But turns out that, like, despite all of that, it's still like probably not a bubble, and it's still like going to be super useful. And like in my like this is the part where it's biased and not like objectively true, but I think it'll be like the single most impactful thing like for humanity. Like that. I know it's like weird to kind of separate the false pattern matching to like know this, like the better way to like look at it is like, there are people that use it every day and like swear by it, like in terms of its utility. They are doing productive, value adding things in society, which you could never say that for crypto. You can never say that for mortgage backed securities. Like those things weren't value adding to society. Like the the utility is there. The progress is still exponential. I know that like people just look at like, you know, benchmark. They'll take like the worst benchmark out of like, 100 that a model score, like, oh my god, it only increased by 1% or whatever, like on this new model release. Like if you zoom out from model progress, we get a new, like a brand new model like every month now, or even like every week. Um, like, and each model like is like a tiny bit better than the last one. If you zoom out to the state that we were at a year ago with AI progress, it is insane like how much compounded like gains we've had over the past year, and how much it's speeding up. Actually, it took OpenAI like a year and a half to come up with reasoning. Now every single frontier lab has reasoning. All the Chinese open source labs have reasoning. um like and not just that they have reasoning, how much better the reasoning is. Back then it could think on a task for like a minute or two. Now there's model, like, I myself have used models where it's thought about and worked on something autonomously for like an hour or two. Like, that is that not like crazy to think about, that like there's a machine that I can, this is simplifying, there's a machine that I can type words to on my computer. It'll think about a problem and do work for me for 2 hours. Like that. That's just personally what I've seen. Like models are labs are claiming that they've gone into work for like 20 or 30 hours. I assume that there's something there's probably a way I could get to like, I don't think they're doing 20 or 30 hours of value adding work. I'm not saying that like big labs aren't kind of, stretching benchmarks sometimes, or kind of hyping up things, saying every model is like so good, and so like some models are like kind of, very tiny upgrades or not upgrades at all. Like the general trend though is that things are increasing exponentially. Models are getting better. AI spend is pretty justified. There are speculative aspects to the financials around AI that could lead you to false pattern match that it's like up just a giant bubble that'll come crashing. But there's a lot of reasons, like I said, with the kind of, if you look at the financials uh of AI products more like kind of pragmatically. If you look at it from like a trends and like data POV, if you look at it from the utility POV, like it, I don't know. I feel like it. It feels like people want it to be bad because they haven't used it, so they have no reason to like the product. They they see that they don't like all these like popular rich. I don't want to give names here. That's the only reason I'm being like kind of vague. They see all these popular like kind of rich people or big companies saying AI is the next coolest thing, and they're like, oh, I don't like those guys. They scammed me out in the past. I don't want to support them. So like they say, like, I understand why. Like it just, I know it sucks that it is that way. That like, there's a trend that feels like it's like, a crypto bubble or whatever, but turns out it is actually super useful, and the spending there on building this out actually makes sense, and that like I'm not saying it's all perfect either. Like there are lots of issues. Like, I gave areas where I think there are, we have to make sure that we allocate energy to this properly. I think there's lots of work to be done about around better benchmarks for AI. Um, yeah, let me hold on. I need to go through like what um so the circular spend creates illusion of real demand. I think I debunked that enough. Like AI labs are so bottlenecked by the amount of compute that they have. The reason that the circular spend thing even exists is because companies are so desperate for data centers. Um, if if OpenAI, okay, let's say whatever OpenAI has committed for data centers, let's say they could, like, let's say they could double whatever they, you know, they let's say they could double whatever they've said they're gonna commit to Stargate internally. Um, if they could double that, and then let's say they could get funding for that, and in return they get that data centers, like those data centers right now. It doesn't take like a year or two to build out. They would do that in a heartbeat. Like even if it took double the cost, even if the models would become out, like they are so bottlenecked for research and inference on, like, I experienced this personally where I gave that codex example. I cannot imagine me as like an end user consumer. Like imagine how bottlenecked like the cutting edge research are. Like if you speak to any researcher, they will tell you the same thing. Like if I had more compute, I could do XYZ more things and it would be like this much more helpful. Like there's no like the only fake demand being generated is like that, like it kind of hypes up their stock price. But like and they might be they might not like intentionally be thinking that, oh, the technology is going to turn out to be so useful that like the stock pumping is going to like, they might just genuinely be like, oh yeah, if we make this deal, it'll pump our stock price. Like that's probably what like the biz guys are saying. like like it's just very likely that like the kind of unhealthy deals that are being made right now turn out to like be fine. Like, again, like I said, worst case scenario is that all the compute just goes to researchers at other labs who are even more, like, if the biggest companies in the world are desperate for more compute, imagine how desperate like smaller teams are. That's the entire reason that, like, the Chinese open source race even begins, is because they were so compute constrained. They were forced to come up with like new genius solutions to like training models on like horrible architecture. That's actually, this is like an idea that, like, you know China, China is training almost frontier level models. Although, like, if you compare it to like what OpenAI has internally, not probably what they do have internally, like it's not. But like near frontier level ish, China is doing that on outdated hardware. If that, like, from like years ago, I don't know the number. Like I want to say like 3 or 4 years, but like it might be longer. Like China is doing that on outdated hardware. If China can train good open source models on outdated hardware and then inference those at scale with older hardware and still like useful, that that in of itself proves the deprecation thing. Like that the deprecation thing is like, it it means old generation GPUs are still useful. Like I don't even know like why I didn't mention that earlier. I should have. This is the part that sucks. So like, to remain authentic to my 10 viewers that are gonna watch this video, I wanna like, just do it all in one cut without like, I have job point notes on like, maybe seeing like the reflection of my glasses on like, you know these are like points that people say against it. Like I have like 10 of them, but like I don't have like notes on what I'm gonna say. Like China is training on old hardware. Um, Again, back to that thing on like, what if base model AI progress all froze right now? What kind of, not, I guess China's really proving this, but like in general, what we're proving based on like the way we're now doing model improvements, that if like our base models didn't get better, instead we had to like figure out a way to, how can I make this model really useful for a hairstylist? And we had to then RL and like fine tune the models for like a hairstylist. That can be done. The only reason right now is just like it's a resource allocation thing. If we figure out coding first, coding figure out like, you know, raw coding, like, make me this app figures out certain things, but like it figures out, using all kind of office software, that's why like the Excel stuff is solved now. It figures out like kind of all the ancillary like computer use stuff in general. It can monitor a system, monitor a database. Like it can it solves all that stuff, and then you can apply that to robotics and hardware because it can like it can understand like system level dynamics well because it can code. Like solving coding first is just like a resource allocation thing. Like if we solve coding first, and then we can go to like the smaller step stuff after because it'll be much easier if we solve coding first. Um, that's the only reason. Like I think like if they wanted to solve like running a hedge fund using LLMs like in giving or I don't know not hedge fund because that's also like a niche use case like if they want to solve like being like a service level employee at like Walmart like using LLMs they could solve that like if they apply the amount of resource allocation they're giving to coding. It's just like a kind of trade off and like kind of future like this is what we're going to use it for like type thing. um like there was a lot of verifiable proof that RL, which just means like kind of hanging like a carrot out in front of the model and be like, yeah, do this task well, and like you'll get a reward. That is a horribly simplified explanation of it, just saying, but like it just means using rewards to kind of train LLMs. If we came up with reward frameworks for like I said, much more like common standard jobs, they could figure it, and they are like their goal is to figure that stuff out eventually. Um, One real concern that I actually think is very fair, and that I'm like personally I bring up in discussions is the job security, job replacement stuff. A lot of like industry leaders reduce it down to like, oh, innovation always brings new jobs. I think this case, because of how innovative and kind of special and unique AI is, I don't think that'll be. I think humans will have a lot more free time. They'll be a lot more productive, that could like be if our current structure doesn't change. That'll be a lot more. That'll be devastating economically to like the average everyday person. That is like my number one concern. Not any of the other stuff. That is the number one everyday. Like AI will be so innovative that like so many jobs will be displaced that it'll like actually be like harmful, um, very harmful economically to the average person. I think I'd entertain lots of solutions to that. I'd be down for like some kind of UBI system. I'd be down for like a different kind of way we allocate work. I'd like I'm open to like solutions there. I just it's like it's that in of itself also isn't like a reason to be anti AI. Like our economic system and kind of allocation now isn't very healthy for the everyday person, like inequality wise. Like that stuff has to be changed anyways, and AI is probably going to be like the kind of extra water that like breaks the dam or whatever. Like I forget the saying, but like it'll be like the pressure point like really like put like causes that to happen. Um, yeah, I feel like I've talked about everything, but like I feel like copy the yeah. I mean, I think I've covered everything, or at least like the main kind of like talking points around this. Um, yeah, if you want like a part two or something on this, maybe leave a comment on like stuff I missed or stuff I maybe explained horribly because I'm sure I did without like a script or like a podcast interview format. Um, yeah, I appreciate the 10 viewers for watching. If you want, yeah, like if you, I said this in my last video 6 months ago. I'm like, if you want more, leave a comment. Um, and then like people left comments, and I haven't made a video since then. I made one more video addressing some things. But yeah, it's been a while and I haven't made a video. So yeah, feel free. It'll be addressed at some point maybe if you make a comment. Or also, I mean, I'd probably just respond to the comments myself, like with just like clarifying stuff maybe. But um, yeah, yeah, we can sign off here. Thanks for watching until now.